Hello, everybody.
Oh, hello.
It's been a minute since I did anything Pokemon game related that wasn't just opening packs. So, hi, I'm Gyro Sean, and today I'm going to talk about a deck that you might have seen on Twitter a little bit, but I played a slightly altered version, very small, of this at a league challenge yesterday when I'm recording this. And it's a small thing in like the grand scheme of things, but it's a big deal for me. I did well, and it was the first time that I was able to place in any meaningful way. Hold on, let's get this. Able to get third place. It's not first, it's third. I get it, but that's cool. It's the first time I've ever gotten any sort of CP, being somewhat new to the game, and it feels good. So I figured let's do a little deck profile on this deck that I ran. So yeah, this deck that you might have seen before, it's ability Zard, but without the Zard. So people are calling it like Welder and Friends. That's what Zach Lesage calls it. Or I just call it ability no Zard, just because like everybody knows ability Zard, but this just doesn't have it. But I actually agree with Zach that this is probably the best way to run this deck. Yes, you have Zard that can hit for 230, and it doesn't discard energy in doing so, and I get the benefits. The problem is it's a 3-prizer. And so many decks are able to take down that 3-prizer kind of easily. So yeah, I'll just go over the profile of what I did with this deck. So I think first things first, I think it's important to start off with, yeah, this runs 4 Jirachi. Why? Because you need to start a Jirachi, so you put as many of them in your deck as you can muster. So boom, 4 Jirachi as part of your draw engine, and the other part of your draw engine is 3 Dedenne. In a perfect world, you never bench all 3 Dedenne, but you know, sometimes that's how it be. So you have your draw supporters, your draw engine, so to speak, and then you have Vulpix and Ninetales. I was just running a 2-2 line of these cards, but you could run 3 Vulpix, 2 Ninetales if you find the space for it. Tweak the deck however you like. But yeah, 2-2 line of Vulpix, Ninetales. I never had a problem really getting them out when I needed them. So yeah, it worked out for me. And now we're really coming to the attackers, right? So in terms of the attackers, I have, in my version of the deck, I put 2 Blacephalon in. Now this can certainly be difficult to pull off with really big tag teams in a row. But you figure, okay, I'll attach 3 energy, discard 5 or 6 energy. I was able to get that on very early turn and do very well. So I'm running 2 Blacephalon in that build. And then the other big attacker is Heatran. Steaming Stomp does work if you're up against something like a Giratina or a Malamar. I think if you're up against, I didn't play Malamar with this. If you're up against Malamar, it's already going to be a bad time. But, you know, this does do 130. So maybe you get a couple of prizes off of him. So the prize trade evens out. And then the other attackers are all sort of one-offs. The Heatran is a one-off as well, technically. We have Victini, Prism Star, which in my version of the build cannot one-shot a 270 Pokemon. It is there to do any sort of cleanup that needs to be done. If they are putting out something that isn't a massive Pokemon and you have the right amount of energy in the discard, it can certainly do that. I think with my build, it can do a max 220 damage. So, you know, everything that's not a tag team is going down to this thing for the most part. But yeah, if you haven't softened up a tag team, this guy is not going to cut it. Then you have Turtonator. I think this is the card that a lot of people are playing 2 of instead of 2 of Blacephalon. You could kind of go either way. I know that's the way Zach ran it, with 2 of Turtonator over Blacephalon, but I only have 1 Turtonator. So to be frank, that's why I run 2 Blacephalon, because I had 2 of them. I teched in a Tapu Fini. I don't know how many versions of Ability Zard are pushing a Tapu Fini, but I think it's still valid because Blacephalon is a bad matchup. Not bad, but like sometimes awkward matchup. specifically because of things like Bursting Burn, and they can burst GX, and Naganadal's rough. So I actually did play a Blacephalon in the final match that I won. I was 2-1, and the person I was up against was 3-0. So I got third because of resistance, but it was a Blacephalon, and I was able to ensure that no one went 4-0 at this league challenge. But yeah, Tapu Fini definitely came in hand there. And then the last card, Volcanion. To be honest, I don't think I ever used Volcanion. The Flare Starter is cool, but it is an early game card. And if you're taking fire energy out with Volcanion, you're not taking it out with things like Fiery Flint, which is not always a good way to play this deck. Yeah, it can hit for 110 if you have 4 energy on the board and kind of clean up things that are small Pokemon that you don't need to do a lot of damage to. But honestly, Volcanion is one of these cards that I could see maybe coming out of this deck. I don't know if it needs it. Maybe put in a second Turt. Obviously, you have energy acceleration issues if you take this out and put in a second Turt. But maybe it's good in certain matchups. I don't know. I didn't use it in all 4 of my matchups, really. Just because you got to go fast, right? So this doesn't go fast. Anyway, so those are the Pokemon. I'll just set these 4 right here. And we can move on to the trainer cards. As far as trainer cards go, let's start with supporters. As you would expect in a Firebox, I have 4 Welder and a Palpad, which, you know, if everything works out, you basically have 6 Welders, which is really good. By the time that you are halfway through this deck, you can Palpad in a Welder again, 2 Welders back into the deck, and your odds of finding one of your hopefully 4 Welders in half of your deck with those Jirachis super high. I think there was only like 1 game that I had a really awkward, the last game actually against Blacephalon, that I had a really awkward time finding Welders. I found 2, and I was searching and searching and searching for that final Welder. And it was on the very last turn that I was able to find that final Welder to... Actually, I never found that final Welder. I just stalled it out long enough to get enough energy onto Heatran. But that's also because I prized, my last 2 prizes were Welder and Palpad. So as long as you're not ending up with your last prize or 2 being Welder and Palpad, I think you can find your Welders all right with this engine. So those are your supporters. You know, treat your Welders well in this deck, because if you start getting rid of too many of them, if you have a really awkward hand, that's the thing about this deck, is you could have really awkward hands where you have a Dedenne and like 2 Welders in a hand, and you're like, I need a Dedenne. That could be bad. That could be very bad. But anyways, those are your supporters. In terms of your Pokemon search, you have, in my deck at least, I have 4 Pokecoms, and then I have 1 Cherish Ball and 1 Friend Ball. Friend Ball did come in handy a couple of times to find a specific thing. Like most people run Dedenne, so it can find you a Dedenne. If you're up against anything that runs Fire Pokemon and puts them on the bench, boom, you can go grab whatever Fire Pokemon you need in that moment. So I think this set of Pokemon search was pretty good. You know, there were times where I was like, I really need to find another attacker, because, you know, you start with Jirachi, cool. You can go find a Dedenne, cool. You need a Vulpix and a Ninetales. That's 2 of your searches right there. So you do have moments where it's like, okay, well, I'm running out of search options, and I really just need to get another attacker on the board. That's the only thing that I think is really hairy about this deck, is getting enough attackers on the board so you're not completely up a creek, so to speak. So those are your Pokemon search. In terms of getting out of a bad situation, you have 2 escape boards for the 4 Jirachi. I think that's plenty. I also play 3 switch in this deck. Maybe that some decks will have 2 switch or 4 switch. I felt like 2 was pretty good. The only reason a 3 was pretty good, the main reason I played that many and not just 2 is because of things like Turtonator, or I believe Heatran. So, yeah, have 3 retreat cost, which is very high. And yes, you want to get things into the discard for the purposes of Victini, but you don't want to get them. You don't want to be in a situation where you use a lot of your attack power and you discard a lot in this deck, and now you have to power up all of your energy to then just retreat something. That's terrible. So that's why I play the 3 switch. And it gives you a lot of like double Jirachi action, which is good. In terms of recovering all that fire energy, this is where this version of abilities really differs from the original list that Tord had. This one runs 4 fire crystal and 1 fiery flint. I've seen some builds with 2 fiery flint. I think that could be really interesting. I think the only issue with 2 fiery flint is like managing the fiery flints with the giant hearths. Because if you end up with like not enough in deck late game or something when you need to fiery flint and grab a bunch, yeah, that's why I don't know if 2 is really necessary, because you have so many giant hearts, which I'll get to that in a second. So yeah, these are sort of your finding your energy in mass so you can use them with Blacephalon. In terms of a little bit more draw support, you have 3 acro bikes that I'm running here. Pretty standard stuff. And then finally, in terms of the trainers, we have the stadiums. You're running 3 giant hearts and 1 heat factory. Now, I think one thing, helicopters. I think one thing that you could consider with this deck, I don't know where you find the space for it in all of this, is Shrine of Punishment. Because, right, you have Dedenne and you have Heatran, those are GXs, but let's be honest, Dedenne is going to go down if they're really targeted at all. Heatran has a little bit of sturdiness to it at 190, but most decks, if they are determined, they can do it. So, you know, those Shrine of Punishments, if you say took out 1 giant hearth and then you put in 2 shrines and then found a space for that somewhere, then those ticks could really get you to a little bit better of a numbers game, right? 270 down to 250 means you only discard 5 energy, whether it's from the field or from your hand. It means Heatran only needs 5 energy on him. It really makes it a little bit easier, because when you're always looking for that 6 number to get those big Pokemon, it's really rough. So I could see Shrine of Punishment making its way into this deck. Then I think finally, what matters, which you know, everyone's probably wondering, is how many energy do I run? Well, I run 14 fire energies in this version of the deck. So I found that was fine most of the time. The game that I lost, though, I had exact numbers. I had everything set up. I had a fiery flint in hand. And I had Victini on the bench. There was a Reshazard with 220, important number, 220 HP left. I hit him, I pinged him with a Volcanion for 50. He had 220 HP left. I had my Ninetales, Victini, all that good stuff, right? I had all the energy that I would need in the discard so long as I could Fiery Flint and grab the last 2 fire energy from my deck. And then I realized there's only 1 fire energy in my deck. And of my last 3 prizes, 1 of them was the other fire energy I needed to Ninetales into the Victini for game. And it was like that was my last turn to do anything before he took a prize and it was game. So that was the only moment where I was like, oh, if I just ran 1 more energy. If I ran 1 more energy in this deck, I would have went 4-0. But I mean, there's always reasons why you win and lose things, right? So 14, I think, is a good number. If you're really squeamish and you want to play 15, you can do it. I don't think this deck can or should play more than that, because you play more than 15 in here and like you're cutting stuff and it just messes with everything. Because really, you want fewer energy in the deck because of Blacephalon. You're running so many fire crystals, you can get those energies straight back. You don't have to discard something. So yeah, overall, I really like this deck. I mean, obviously, I'm biased because it was my first deck that got me any CP, which is great. So shout out again to Zach Lesage for the inspiration for this list. I know me and a friend of mine, Pep, who you've seen on the channel before, we were discussing like ability Zard without Zard about a week before that list came out from Zach, and we were like, what would you run? Would it be Baby Blounds? Would it be Blounds? I mean, I think there could be some angles to run a couple of different ways of this deck. But yeah, let me know what you think of this build. Is this something that you think has any potential, or is this build dreaming? I think it's really, really good. I think it trades really nicely. And amazingly, it trades nicely with Blacephalon, which is a very difficult statement to make. If you can, consistently knock out Blacephalons and Naganadels and trade better than they do, that's pretty good. So anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you like this, definitely feel free to subscribe. Leave a comment down below of what you would edit to this deck, your thoughts on it. And yeah, I will catch you in a future video. Carpe awesome.